Hey guys, it's Eric here at Farpoint Farms. Check it out. I've got the Powersmart 4400 watt open frame inverter generator. Kind of curious to check this out. You know, the enclosed, looks like lunchbox version of inverter generators. They have a lot of insulation around them to keep the noise down. So I'm kind of curious how an open frame one is going to compare. Is it going to sound more like the old school generators, or because it's still an inverter style, is it going to be more quiet? Kind of curious to find that out. Hey, before I get on to today's video, let me remind you, if you're into small engine stuff, if you're into generator repair, mowers, garden tractors, garden implements, stuff like that, I've got a whole new channel called Farpoint Mowers and More. I hope you'll check it out and subscribe over there. All right, let's open this thing up. We'll take it out of the box. We'll take a look around it, get it fired up, and listen to how it sounds. Right, so, oh, nice. All right, so it does have a manual here, and we'll get back to that, but let me go ahead and see if I can lift this thing out of the box. Okay, so what I do see here is it does come with a spark plug kit, and it also comes with a weirdly offset, I'll take that out of the box, we're gonna need it, a weirdly offset oil funnel to fill the unit up, because they just do ship dry. All right, let me grab the manual and let's take a look at what we got here. It's a good looking little thing. It's definitely not large by any means, considering how many watts it puts out. I would consider it to be small in size, honestly. So this sheet here is just warranty stuff, and then our main manual is here. Now, it did not come with oil. That is the only thing I wish that these generators would come with oil, because I know that a lot of people that are buying generators may not be mechanically savvy and may not realize, and especially if they don't read the manual, that you got to put some oil in them or you're going to have problems. So it has a list of all the things: run stop switch, CO alarm, LED alarm, AC reset, AC breaker, and it does have a 20 amp receptacle and a 30 amp receptacle for 120. It also has a 12 volt port, which is kind of cool, ground terminal, which is really cool, and it does offer parallel operations. It has an oil warning light and an overload indicator and a running indicator, so that's kind of cool. Kind of give you, kind of like a car has, you know, emergency lights. Let's see. We can display voltage, frequency, runtime, and total runtime through a digital meter that's on the front here. This is a gas gauge here. And we do have, I think it's a 1.6 gallon tank. And I'll just turn that. Maybe you guys can take a look at that. Of course, I'll get much closer in here. Preparation, unpacking, right? Only use outside. If we're above 5,000 feet, I'm at 3,500 feet. It does say you might have to make some, order a high altitude kit. And check for damaged parts. The engine is not filled with oil before sending it out. The user must add the proper amount of oil. Use only 4-stroke oil. Make sure it's 10W30 for all temperatures. Other viscosities are shown. So for normal use, which is looks like 10 below zero, all the way up to 90 degrees above zero for Fahrenheit, 10W30 is going to be your answer. For 30 degrees down to -20, 5W30 is your answer. And from 50 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up over 100, you can use straight 30 weight, which is getting to be hard to find. It says the oil capacity is 20.3 fluid ounces. Okay. And it just talks about how to start it. And there's other information about like what you can expect as far as how much anything you want to run in your house, how many watts that's going to be, coffee makers, things like that. And it even has a maintenance thing. So engine oil, every time you do it, check the oil. Air filter, check it every time you use it. Spark plug, replace every 250 hours of operation. I don't think I know of anybody that ran, even during Hurricane Helene, which was mega off-grid event for all of us up here in the mountains. Yeah, I don't think anybody ran one for 250 hours. There just wasn't that much fuel available. Spark arrestor, saying clean it every 3 months of use. And it says check and replace as needed the fuel line, which is very interesting. Cool, so that's cool. So look, I'm going to obviously pause the camera and put some oil in this thing, but I do want to talk about generators in general. The problem that people ran into here in Helene is that if they had a generator, if they were lucky enough to own one, they probably hadn't touched it since the last major event, which, if I remember, was either 2017 or 2018, where we went many days without power. And so that's a good long time. You let a generator or any piece of equipment sit that long, and you don't have a piece of equipment anymore. You have a big problem on your hands. So if you're going to own one of these things, my recommendation is when you're done, when the storm is over, you drain out as much fuel as possible, and then you run this thing until it runs out of fuel. Just that alone will really, really help the longevity of the unit. Because if the carburetor is bone dry, if it has run out of fuel, it can't collect moisture, it can't get gummed up with varnish, and gasoline goes bad. It starts to smell bad, and then it starts to turn into like a varnish, really, and it really can damage the components. Now, if you're mechanically savvy, sure, you can take the time to take apart a carburetor and fix it all. But here's what usually happens. Here's what happened. You're mechanically savvy or not, you're attempting to fix this thing with no power, and you can't wash up afterwards, so you're getting covered in nasty smelling gas or whatever else, and carb cleaner and stuff trying to fix it, and that may or may not work. That ain't great. So if you're going to use one of these things, like I said, run it out of gas. If you can't run it out of gas, you got to put a bunch of fuel stabilizer in it. Like whatever, I use Pride G, but whatever it is, whatever brand of fuel stabilizer you're going to use, you're going to want to add like 5 times the recommended amount, because it might be 5 years before you touch this thing again. You can't guarantee on any piece of equipment to run if it hasn't been touched for 5 years. Best advice, if you're going to leave fuel in it, start it and run it often and keep that fuel stabilizer in there. Anyway, let me get the camera off the tripod. We're going to take a quick walk around here, and then I will, off camera, put some oil in it, put some fuel in it, take it outside, and we'll fire it up and listen to how loud it is, and that'll wrap up the video. All right, you can see up here, there's actually a gauge, fuel gauge, which is really cool. I like that. And we do have a vent here that then vents back into the carburetor. Here's our cap, which is a pretty significant cap, right? And it does have a filter built in, so hopefully it keeps crud from getting in there. The front's where the money's at, so let's take a close look at that. We have our multi-use meter here. It's going to tell us total run time, the amount of run, the voltage, frequency, all that stuff is going to be there. Of course, engine on-off is right there. DC breaker reset. We have a 12-volt cigarette lighter outlet right there. We have our ground terminal, which is really important. If you're going to be running radio gear or sensitive equipment off of this, I would highly recommend that you use that ground, hook it to a ground rod, and put it out there in the yard or whatnot. Overload reset, so if the thing is tripped, we can do that. AC breaker for the 20 amp is right there, and 30 amp RV hookup. So 30 amps, plenty of juice, honestly. Now it is only 120 volts, so it's not a 240. Okay. On off as far as eco mode, I recommend leaving that on. It'll run it at a lower speed when not needed. And then lastly, our parallel outlets. You can see here's the exposed engine. This engine is probably extremely similar to the one that's found in the inverter generators that are covered up, but having the exposed frame gives you a couple of extra features here. I got my access to the choke, and I have a fuel cutoff right there. There's also a sediment bowl on the bottom of that. That's kind of a nice feature. The back here, you can see the back side of the muffler with some heat shielding, and this here is our dipstick. Again, here's some close-up of the model information if you want to take a look at that real quick. And then lastly, on this side we have our check and fill area, and we have our pull start here. And it has some pretty easy to follow instructions on how to get her started. It does say, hey, unplug before you turn it off. You turn a generator off with everything still plugged in, the voltage is going to drop. That could damage equipment, especially compressor motors, things like that. If your refrigerator or whatnot, that's big time bad. And some close up there. I'll get on that for you as well. Just some information for you. Now the whole unit sits on rubber pads and then sits on more rubber pads down here. So vibration wise, it should not be that bad. All right, let me pause the camera. I'll fill it up with oil and gas. We'll take it outside and we'll fire it up. All right, so we have some fuel in here. We have some oil in here. I'm gonna make sure that's on. Eco mode's on. Both those are reset. Let's see here. Fuel to the on position, choke to the on position. There's no primer bulb to pump up on this. So we're ready to pull. very first time it's been started. So my guess would be that it's going to take a few pulls to get that gas all the way down into the bowl of the carburetor. But I've been surprised before. Let's see if I'll be surprised again. Ready? Okay, one cool thing about this, with the fuel cutoff valve, if you notice what I was doing there, I shut the fuel supply off to the carburetor and then let the engine run itself out of gas before turning it off. That at least keeps any gas that may be in here, if it goes bad, in here. Flip the thing over, dump it out, put some fresh stuff in, and your generator is far more likely to start the second time. Look, it's not as loud as a conventional old school generator, but it's also not quiet. If you're looking for an inverter generator that is more for campsites, stuff like that, Powersmart sells those. I've reviewed one before from that company, and I've been very pleased with it. In fact, we still have it. This one is more for emergency backup for your house, where noise concerns aren't really the issue, just getting stable 4,400 watts of power, 3,600 watts of runtime to your house. It also is much more conventional than the old Briggs & Stratton, Tecumseh, and Kohler powered generators. This overhead valve style of engine is going to give you a whole lot better gas mileage or fuel economy than a conventional old school generator would give. I also like the fact that it has a relatively large, to almost 1.6 gallons, a little over 1.5 gallons of fuel. That's going to give it a pretty extended runtime, I would say. Look, I'll leave a link to where you can pick one of these up, and I'll see you next time. Take care.